Imagine an empire that dominated the known world, a king who believed himself invincible, and a young orphan girl who seemed insignificant in the face of such grandeur. No one could imagine that the fate of an entire nation would depend on the silent courage of this woman. Amidst lavish banquets, palace intrigues, and death decrees, a story of faith and divine providence begins to unfold, not with thunder from the sky, but with human decisions moved by the invisible hand of God. This is the story of Esther, the star that shone in the midst of darkness, proving that even when God seems absent, He is writing the most glorious chapters of history. Before we delve deeper, I remind you to like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. The stage, the fall of Vashti, and the search for a queen in the vast and opulent courts of the Persian Empire, under the rule of the powerful king, historically identified as Xerxes II, unfolds a drama that would echo through the millennia. The narrative begins in Susan, the empire's winter capital, with a display of power bordering on arrogance. King Ahasuerus throws an extravagant 180-day banquet to showcase his wealth and glory at the height of the festivities. Drunk with wine and pride, he orders his wife, Queen Vashti, to appear before his guests to display her beauty. In an act of shocking defiance for the time, Vashti refuses. Vashti's refusal was not merely a personal affront. It was seen as a political crisis, a threat to the authority of every husband in the empire. Advised by his wise men, Ahasuerus deposes Vashti, banishing her from his presence. The throne beside the most powerful king on earth was suddenly empty. Then begins the imperial contest. The most beautiful virgins from all 127 provinces of the empire would be brought to the royal harem in Susan. Among them was a stunningly beautiful young Jewish woman named Ahasuerus, meaning myrtle. Orphan. She had been raised by her older cousin Mordecai, a Jew from the tribe of Benjamin, who served as a junior official at the palace gates. Following Mordecai's wise advice, Hadassah hides her Jewish identity and adopts her Persian name, Esther, which ironically means hidden star. Esther quickly wins the favor of Regai, the eunuch in charge of the harem, and after 12 months of beauty treatments, she is finally brought to the king. Ahasuerus falls in love with her more than with any other woman. He crowned the queen, replacing Vashti, a Jewish orphan, hiding his faith and his people. Now he wore the crown of the greatest empire in the world. The conflict, the pride of Ramah, and the death decree. While Esther adapted to life in royalty, her cousin Mordecai remained faithfully at the palace gates. There he discovers and exposes a plot by two eunuchs to assassinate the king, saving Ahasuerus' life. Mordecai's act is recorded in the kingdom's annals, but for the time being, he is not rewarded. The scene quickly darkens with the rise of a new villain, Ram, or Agagite. The designation Agagite is crucial. He was a descendant of Agag, the king of the Amalekites, historical enemies of the people of Israel, whom King Saul was ordered to destroy centuries before. King Hachu promotes Ram to the highest position in the empire, second only to the king himself. The royal decree was that everyone should bow down and pay homage to Ram. But Mordecai, firm in his Jewish faith, which forbids bowing down to any man in such a way, reserving such worship only for God, refuses. Mordecai's refusal was not an isolated act of rebellion, it was a declaration of identity. Ram, consumed by wounded pride and ancestral hatred, is not content to punish only Mordecai. Upon discovering that Mordecai was Jewish, Ram sees the opportunity to carry out genocide. He manipulates the king by describing a certain people scattered throughout the empire, whose laws were different and who did not obey the king. He offers an astronomical sum of silver to finance the annihilation of this people. The apathetic and careless king hands his signet ring to Raman, saying, "Do with this people as you see fit." Raman casts the pui, the lot to determine the ideal day for the massacre. The lot falls on the 13th day of the month of Adar. Decrees are sealed and sent to all the provinces. In a single day, all the Jews, young and old, women and children, were to be killed and their possessions plundered. While Raman and the king drank, the city of Susa was in a panic. The turning point for a time like this, the news reaches Mordecai, who tears his clothes, dresses in sackcloth and ashes, and weeps bitterly at the palace gates. The news of Mordecai's mourning reaches Esther, who is not yet aware of the decree. She sends him clothes, which he refuses. Then, Mordecai sends Esther a copy of the decree and a message that would become the heart of the book. He urges her to go into the king's presence, intercede for her people, and reveal her identity. Esther, the Persian law was absolute. Anyone, including the queen, who approached the king without being summoned, would be put to death unless the king extended his golden scepter. Esther reminds Mordecai that she had not been summoned to the king's presence for 30 days. She was in a precarious position. Mordecai's response is one of the most profound theological statements in the Bible. Do not think that because you are in the king's palace, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows, but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Mordecai was saying, your silence will not save you, nor will it thwart God's plan. God will save his people. The only question is whether you will have the courage to be the instrument he will use. This message transforms Esther. The hesitant young woman becomes a courageous strategist. She makes her decision. She asks Mordecai to gather all the Jews of Susa to fast for her for 3 days and 3 nights. She and her maids would do the same. And then she speaks the deadly words of surrender and courage. I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. If I have to die, I will die. Hidden providence, royal insomnia, and strategic banquets. After the 3 days of fasting, Esther dresses in her royal robes and stands in the inner courtyard. The king sees her, and miraculously his heart softens. He extends the golden scepter. What do you desire, Queen Esther? He asks. Even half of my kingdom I will give you. Here Esther demonstrates brilliant strategic wisdom. Instead of making her request, she immediately invites King Raman to a private banquet. At the banquet, the king again offers Esther anything. She once again postpones. Her only request is that King Raman come to another banquet the following day. Raman leaves the first banquet exultant. He was the only guest of the king and queen, but as he passes through the gate, he sees Mordecai, who again refuses to bow down. Raman's anger returns. His wife Zeres and his friends suggest that he build a gallows over 20 meters high, and in the morning, ask the king for permission to hang Mordecai on it. Raman loves the idea and orders the gallows to be built. That same night, the central event of the story takes place. The king couldn't sleep. To pass the time, Atuero asks for the records from the kingdom's chronicles to be brought to him. The servant reads exactly the passage about how Mordecai saved the king's life from the assassination plot. What honor and recognition did Mordecai receive for this? Asks the king. Nothing was done for him, the servants replied. At that very moment, Raman enters the outer courtyard, ready to demand Mordecai's life. The king calls him and asks, what should be done for the man whom the king delights to honor? Raman, in his arrogance, thinks the king must be talking about himself. He describes an extravagant ceremony. Dress the man in royal robes, place him on the king's horse, and have the most important nobleman in the kingdom lead him through the city, proclaiming, thus do it to the man whom the king delights to honor. The king's response is devastating. Go quickly and do all this for Mordecai the Jew who sits at the king's gate. Humiliated, Raman is forced to publicly honor his most hated enemy. He returns to the house of mourning, but barely has time to lament before being rushed to Esther's second and final banquet. The climax, the final banquet, and Raman's downfall. At the second banquet, King Ahasuerus asks for the third time, offering Esther whatever she desires. The moment had arrived. Esther finally reveals her request. If I have found favor in the king's eyes, let my life be spared. This is my request. And let my people be spared. This is my desire. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. The king is shocked. Who is he? Where is the man who dared to do such a thing? Esther points her finger. The enemy adversary is this wicked Raman. Raman is terrified. The furious king goes out into the garden. In despair, Raman throws himself onto the couch where Esther was reclining, begging for his life. The king returns at that exact moment and interprets the scene as an attempt to assault the queen in her own house. "Ra-Arbona!" shouts the king to a eunuch. Arbona, seeing the king's anger, says, "Indeed, there is a gallows more than 20 meters high that Raman prepared for Mordecai, the one who spoke in favor of the king. Hang him on it," orders the king. Raman is executed on the same gallows he prepared for Mordecai. Salvation, the turning of the tables. The threat, however, had not yet passed. Raman was dead, but his decree, sealed with the king's ring, could not be revoked. Esther again risks her life, falling at the king's feet, begging him to reverse the evil plan. The king grants Esther Mordecai, who now held the position of Raman, the power to use his ring to write a new decree. The new decree, quickly sent throughout the empire, did not annul the first, but circumvented it. It gave the Jews the legal right to assemble, love one another, and defend themselves against anyone who attacked them. On the 13th of Adar, when the day arrived, the scene had changed. The people of the empire, seeing that Mordecai was in power and that the queen was Jewish, feared the Jews. Instead of a massacre, the Jews obtained a great victory over their enemies. The day of mourning was transformed into a day of joy. To commemorate this miraculous salvation, Mordecai and Esther instituted the Festival of Purim, plural of casting lots, an annual celebration of the turnaround that God provided, transforming mourning into feasting and darkness into light. Lessons from the Book of Esther for today. The Book of Esther is unique. It is one of only 2 books in the Bible, along with the Song of Solomon, that do not mention the name of God. There are no overt miracles, prophecies, or direct divine interventions, and yet the presence of God is felt on every page. This absence of God is perhaps the greatest lesson of the book, the hidden providence of God, God behind the scenes. The story of Esther teaches us that God is actively working, even when he seems silent or absent. He used the insomnia of a pagan king, the vanity of a villain, the time of a banquet, and the courage of a hidden young woman to save his people. In our lives, when we don't see clear miracles, God is still orchestrating the details, making them coincidental to fulfill his purposes. Strategic courage. For a time like this, Mordecai challenged Esther to see her position as queen, not as a privilege for her own security, but as a platform for a greater purpose. We are often placed in positions of influence at work, in the family, in the community, not for our comfort, but for a time like this. Esther's faith was not passive. She fasted and prayed, but then she acted with wisdom, strategy, and immense courage. The destructiveness of hatred and pride. Raman is the perfect portrait of arrogance. His wounded pride led him to plan a genocide. His hatred blinded him to his own destruction. The story is a powerful warning that pride precedes a fall, Proverbs 16:18, and that hatred consumes first the one who hates. The importance of identity and unity. Esther had to choose between the comfort of her assimilated identity, Queen Esther, and the risk of her true adopted identity, the Jewish woman. At the crucial moment, she identified with her people. Moreover, she did not act alone. She called her people to unity through fasting and prayer. There is immense power when a people unite in purpose and seek God. The divine reversal, the turning around. The central theme of Esther is the turning around. The decree of death becomes a decree of life. The mother focused on the gallows she prepared for Mordecai. The day of mourning becomes a day of celebration, Purim. This is God's specialty. He takes what the enemy planned for evil and transforms it into good. Genesis 50:20. For us, this is a reminder that no matter how dark the situation, God has the power to reverse the irreversible. From mourning to light, Purim and the gospel. Purim represents the divine reversal. Evil is transformed into good, death into victory. When Jesus declares himself to be the light of the world, he presents himself as the supreme fulfillment of this divine reversal. The light that dispels spiritual darkness and overcomes the death sentence imposed by sin. Just as Rama's decree was overcome by a new decree of life, the cross and resurrection of Christ cancels a decree of condemnation that weighed upon humanity. The festival of Purim is marked by joy, sharing, and remembrance of divine faithfulness. Similarly, when Jesus affirms that he is the light, He invites everyone to walk in that same joy and to spread the light of the kingdom, so that your light may shine before men. Matthew 5:16. The transition from despair to celebration on Purim is the harbinger of the victory of Christ's light over the darkness of sin and death. When faith replaces fear, when obedience overcomes pride, and when God's people unite in fasting and prayer, the impossible happens, because the God who reversed the decree of death into life continues today to transform mourning into celebration, fear into courage, and silence into victory.